Okay, friends, today we're going to be talking about the Big Five literary techniques. This is for Miss Oyola's Grade 8 Communication Arts class. Why should you care? We always start our presentations with something on why this is something that should matter. Literary techniques, also called figurative language, make writing beautiful. There would be no poetry or art in writing without literary techniques. We will focus on the Big Five literary techniques: sensory details, also called imagery, metaphor, simile, personification, and symbol. We're going to start with a quick review. Before we start thinking about literary techniques, let's review. There are four major types of writing: narrative, expository, persuasive, and descriptive. Narrative is a fancy English teacher word for a story. So if you're reading something that has a plot pyramid with a beginning, middle, and end, and characters, and it's telling a story, you should call that a narrative, especially as you get ready to start high school. And the literary elements are the basic pieces or elements of a narrative. If you don't have these pieces, you probably don't have a narrative. They're character, plot, setting, point of view, and theme. We've talked about these before. So if literary elements are the pieces that you have to have for something to be a story, what are literary techniques? Literary elements are the parts of most stories. Literary techniques add flavor and art to how writers convey those parts. Without literary techniques, writing couldn't be art. The phrases literary techniques and figurative language are usually considered interchangeable. So you've probably heard people say figurative language before. Literary techniques and figurative language, for the most part, mean the exact same thing. So when we think about literary techniques, we think about adding art to our writing. There are many, many, many different types of literary techniques. Some of them, when I read those words, I still don't even know what they mean. But there are some that are way more common than others, some that are in most books that you read. And they are sensory details, metaphor, simile, personification, and symbolism. And we're going to call those the Big Five, because again, they pop up in just about everything that you read. So those are the five we're going to be covering in this presentation. So let's start with sensory details and imagery, because again, this is going to be in pretty much every narrative that you read. Definition: describing with your five senses, which are touch, taste, smell, sight, and hearing. So you're describing what you see, what you feel, what you smell in your writing. Pay attention to the descriptions in adjectives and verbs. Adjectives and verbs usually drive a lot of description. So that's where you're really going to hone into that sensory details. Description always serves a purpose. The words you choose help you create mood in your writing. So the way I describe this house is going to determine how you think about it. I could describe it in a way to make it sound really scary, or I could describe it in a way to make it sound like it's nighttime outside, but this is a place that feels like home to you. And I can create that feeling in you based on how I describe it. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick look at some examples here. So as you can see, you can use any of these examples to get you started when you are trying to use sensory details in your own writing, or when you're trying to find sensory details in what you're reading. And this is a great link. It's in the PowerPoint. It shows you different types of sensory details that are specific to each of the senses. So here's some examples for sight. We've got some examples for sound, smell, touch, and taste. So as you read through these, again, use the link in the PowerPoint, and I'm going to attach it to here as well. Be thinking about what kind of feeling does that description create, because sensory details are supposed to make a feeling. And also keep in mind, like, even though they have these separated out by sense, usually when you're writing sensory details or when you encounter sensory details when you're reading, they're usually all mixed up. Like, you won't just have sight or you won't just have sound. Like, good writing is going to throw a couple in at once to give you one complete picture. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and move on to metaphor. A metaphor directly compares something to something else. Why do you do that? It helps readers see or understand something new about the thing being compared. So an example would be, my life is an open book. Life is being compared to book. And we understand how this person feels about his or her life by saying that my life is an open book. That means that this person is open to sharing their stories, is not afraid to tell you what they've been through, is not the kind of person to hold a bunch of secrets in. Baby, you're a firework. You know, I always got to throw in a song reference. So she's describing the person in the song, the listeners in this case, as a firework because she's saying that they should be proud of who they are. They should be loud and vibrant and explosive. They shouldn't be afraid to show their true colors. So by saying all those things, you understand how she feels about people listening. Love is a battlefield. So love is being compared to battlefield. This person obviously has, again, another song reference, has had some rough relationships if you're saying that love is a battlefield. She has the voice of an angel, comparing her voice to an angel. Okay. Metaphors are very similar to similes, but there is a very important difference. Similes are indirectly comparing something to something else. So metaphor, we said, is directly comparing. Simile is indirectly comparing. Similes usually use like or as, but not all sentences with these words use similes. I've seen a lot of students when they're trying to find similes in their reading or trying to put them in their writing, they just say, oh, look, here's a sentence with the word like in it. Is that a simile? Well, it's not that easy. So don't just say similes use like or as. Like most of them do, but that's not their purpose. It's like a metaphor. It's just not as hard-hitting. So similes also help readers see or understand something new about the thing being compared. Not quite as hard-hitting as metaphors. So we're going to go through some examples and then some non-examples. So hopefully we can clear up a little bit of confusion. It's as hot as an oven in here. The heat is being compared to an oven using the word as. Something that's not a simile would be, it's as hot as it was yesterday. Remember, when you're doing a simile or a metaphor, you're comparing it to something that it's not directly like. Saying it was as hot as it was yesterday, I mean, that's just like saying, you know, my sister is older than me, right? Like that's not a simile until you're using two objects that at first don't seem to be the same, but when you put them together, it helps you understand it differently. Life is like a box of chocolates, very classic from a film. That is a simile. Life is being compared to a box of chocolates using the word like. Life is a box of chocolates. When we take like out, it becomes a metaphor. It's more direct. Larry's temper is like a firecracker. Larry's temper is being compared to firecracker using the word like. Larry is like his twin, Louie. These are two similar. We are talking about the same topic, basically, just throwing the word like in there. Whereas Larry's temper being a firecracker, those are not similar. Those are very different subjects that are driving that simile, but you understand what he's trying to say about the temper based on using that word firecracker. He plays guitar like breathing air. So the way he plays is being compared to breathing air with the word like. He plays guitar as well as he plays every other instrument. So this one is not a simile because it's just a fact. These are just facts. It's not showing you anything new. All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit to personification. I like to just say that personification is a type of metaphor. I think it helps people the most. Personification is a type of metaphor where the thing being compared is not a human, but it's being compared to something human-like. So this is when you take something that's not a person and you write a metaphor about it, but that metaphor makes it sound like it's got something going on that makes it feel like a person. So this will make sense when we get to the examples. I also went ahead and pasted in a super fancy definition that you can kind of pull apart and decode. The attribution of a personal nature or human characteristics to something non-human, or the representation of an abstract quality in human form. So that's what personification is when you're really ramping up that language. Let's look at some examples. The stars danced playfully in the moonlit sky. So the stars are dancing playfully. I mean, obviously that's something that people do, dancing playfully, but you can imagine what the author is trying to say about the stars by using that phrase. The bees played hide and seek with the flowers as they buzzed from one to another. Bees can't play hide and seek. That's something people do. So we're comparing how the bees were behaving to playing hide and seek. That's personification. My cell phone screamed at me to wake up. Cell phone, the sound it's making is being compared to a human scream. Cell phones can't scream. Okay, so it's personification. The glass jumped out of my hands and fell to the floor. This is me, because I'm a klutz. So glasses can't actually physically jump out of your hands, but you can imagine that to the person who is holding this glass, maybe it felt like the glass had just jumped. The tree branch moaned as I swung from it. So again, the word moaned is something that you would associate with like a human sound. The branch moaning, obviously there's a lot of weight on it because the person's holding onto it. So it's creating this sound that sounds like a person. Symbolism. This one's new for 8th grade. We usually don't touch this until we get to 8th grade. So if it's a little confusing at first, that's okay. We're going to go slow. Definition is it is using symbols to represent ideas or themes in a text. The symbols are usually aligned to a text's themes. So this is when you have something, it's usually a thing, in a book that represents more than what it at first seems to be. So to find symbolism, look for images or objects that appear multiple times in the story. If there's like an old shoe that keeps popping up over and over again at different times in the story, especially at like really intense moments in the plot, chances are it's a symbol. That shoe means something more than what it first seems to be. Pay attention to how the characters interact with them. So like if the characters throw the old shoe away and then it somehow gets out of the trash and then they put it on or something like that. Those are all things that let you that can help you try to figure out, okay, why is there this old shoe that keeps popping up and what does it mean? What is the author trying to tell me with this shoe? Think of it like a treasure hunt, right? So symbols don't always pop up right away. I know there's been times where I've read books and I didn't catch symbols until later. And it's like, oh, that was actually like the author was trying to say something deeper there with that. So when you find them, then you got to go back and look at all the places where that thing popped up and read what happened with them to help you figure out their meaning. So some symbols are really common and are used over and over again. This is helpful if you're new to symbols and you have no idea, like an old shoe, like the meaning might not be totally obvious right away, but most of us know that doves are a symbol of peace. So if a dove flies away in the middle of a scene after the characters, forgive each other, obviously that's symbolizing peace. A red rose stands for love or romance, and black is a symbol that represents evil or death. Sometimes authors will use these symbols because they're easily identifiable for the readers. So the core texts that we read in my class do have symbols in them, and we will discuss them as we encounter them. So don't think you're going to be totally lost and just thrown into a book and say, here, find the symbols, because symbolism can be tricky. All right, so what does it all mean? Writers use literary techniques for a reason. It's not just to enhance beauty, it's also to enhance meaning. Why did a writer include a literary technique in a specific spot? Use evidence from the text to answer that question. Pay attention to context clues. Observe the image a literary technique creates in your mind. Think about how these little messages could all be adding up to text themes. So this slide right here is going to summarize everything we've learned in this presentation. Literary techniques are used by writers to enhance meaning and beauty in a text. Sensory details describe with your 5 senses, which are touch, taste, smell, sight, and hearing. Metaphor directly compares something to something else. Simile indirectly compares something to something else. Personification, the attribution of a personal nature or human characteristic to something non-human. Symbolism, using symbols to represent ideas or themes in a text. And use text evidence to determine the meaning of a literary technique. Hopefully this will encourage you to look for literary techniques in your writing and as you're reading, and also to include more of them in your writing. Reach out if you have any questions.